Madison's war gamble that almost ended the Republic. He was the architect of the Constitution, yet watched it bend under fire. The nation he helped design stood on the edge of fracture, and the war he feared most was about to become unavoidable. James Madison did not enter the presidency seeking conflict. He entered it believing structure could restrain chaos. Laws could prevent excess. Systems could outlast emotion. But history has a way of testing theory with force. And Madison would soon learn how fragile even the best designs become under pressure. To understand Madison's presidency, we must return to a moment when the United States was still unsure it deserved to survive. The early 19th century was not an age of confidence. It was an age of provocation. American ships were seized. Sailors were impressed into foreign navies. Trade was strangled by empires that did not respect neutrality. And every insult challenged the young republic's credibility. Madison believed reason could still prevail. That diplomacy could delay escalation. That restraint would preserve the balance he had helped create. But patience began to look like weakness. Political pressure mounted. Voices in Congress demanded action. National honor became a rallying cry. And war, once unthinkable, began to feel inevitable. What made the moment dangerous was not just the enemy abroad. It was a division at home. The nation was split geographically, economically, and ideologically. Some regions favored war. Others feared it would destroy them. Unity, the Constitution's silent partner, was already eroding. Madison stood at the center of this tension, aware of what war would require. A standing army, expanded executive power, emergency measures he once warned against. He understood the paradox clearly. To defend the Republic, he might have to violate the principles that defined it. As the decision approached, Madison hesitated, not from indecision, but from understanding. War was not simply a policy choice. It was a transformation. Once begun, it would reshape the presidency, the Constitution, and the nation's future. And when the final choice was made, there would be no way back. This was the moment James Madison realized the republic he designed was about to be tested by the one force no document could fully contain: war. Once war became real, theory collapsed under urgency. The republic moved faster than its foundations were built to handle. Madison's declaration of war in 1812 was narrow, reluctant, and deeply contested. It passed Congress by the slimmest margins. New England opposed it openly. Merchants feared ruin. Militias hesitated. The nation entered conflict without unity, preparation, or confidence. This was not a war of triumph. It was a war of uncertainty. Almost immediately, the weaknesses Madison feared became visible. The army was small and poorly trained. Command was fragmented. Supplies were inconsistent. State militias refused to cross borders, citing constitutional limits. The structure Madison had helped design now constrained the very response survival demanded. British forces exploited every weakness. They blockaded ports, strangling the economy. They outmaneuvered American generals. Early invasions failed. Confidence eroded. Newspapers questioned the wisdom of the war. Citizens questioned the competence of their leaders. Inside the White House, pressure intensified. Madison faced demands to expand authority, to raise more troops, to enforce compliance, to silence dissent. Each demand struck at principles he once defended with absolute conviction. The Constitution allowed flexibility, but not clarity. Every emergency required interpretation, and every interpretation set precedent. As the war dragged on, opposition hardened. Some states flirted openly with resistance. The idea of secession, once unthinkable, resurfaced quietly. Madison saw the Republic not uniting under pressure, but straining apart. Then came the humiliation that crystallized everything. In 1814, British troops marched into Washington. They burned the Capitol. They burned the White House. The symbols of American governance went up in flames while the president fled the city. For Madison, it was more than defeat. It was personal failure. The Constitution he designed had not prevented this. The system he trusted had not protected the nation's core. The gamble had nearly ended the Republic itself. And yet, even in ruin, the conflict was not finished. The hardest decisions were still ahead. The burning of Washington did not end the war. It stripped away every remaining illusion. With the Capitol in ashes, Madison faced the most severe test of his presidency. Confidence in leadership collapsed. Allies doubted him. Enemies mocked the experiment of American self-rule. If the Republic fell now, it would not be from invasion alone, but from disbelief in its own survival. The conflict inside Madison deepened. He had always believed that ambition must be restrained by structure, that power unchecked would become the greatest threat to liberty. But now, restraint itself looked dangerous. The war demanded speed, unity, and force. The Constitution demanded balance, debate, and limits. The two were colliding in real time. Under pressure, Madison expanded authority further. He strengthened federal control over the military. He tolerated measures that blurred the line between national defense and centralized power. Each decision felt like a betrayal of his earlier warnings. Yet inaction felt worse. The Republic could not survive philosophical purity, if it could not survive at all. Meanwhile, dissent grew more explicit. In New England, leaders gathered in secret, discussing whether the Union still served their interests. The idea that states might abandon the Republic during wartime was no longer theoretical. It was real. Madison now feared the war abroad was less dangerous than fracture at home. As battles continued, the nation oscillated between despair and defiance. Unexpected victories lifted morale briefly, only to be followed by renewed setbacks. There was no clear path forward, only endurance. Madison aged visibly during this period. The quiet scholar was replaced by a leader forced into relentless crisis management. The presidency was no longer an intellectual exercise. It was survival under fire. The emotional peak came not from triumph, but from realization. Madison saw clearly that the Republic's greatest weakness was not military. It was cohesion. A constitution could outline powers, but it could not manufacture unity. The war had exposed the limits of design, and Madison was forced to confront the truth he had spent his life avoiding. No system survives without shared belief. The war ended not with conquest, but with exhaustion, and that ending mattered more than victory ever could. When peace finally arrived, it felt almost accidental. Borders remained unchanged. Lives had been lost for ground that never moved. On paper, the war solved little, but beneath the surface, something fundamental had shifted. The Republic was still standing, burned, divided, scarred, but alive. For Madison, this was the climax of his gamble. The Constitution had bent, but it had not broken. Emergency powers receded. The presidency did not become permanent command. The system he designed survived its first true stress test, not because it was perfect, but because it was resilient enough to recover. Yet Madison did not celebrate. He understood what the war had revealed. That ideals alone could not protect a nation. That unity mattered more than elegance. That the Constitution was not a shield, but a framework that depended on belief to function. The war had nearly ended the Republic, but it had also forged something new, a sense that survival itself was an achievement. That independence was not a moment, but a process, painful, uneven, and always unfinished. Madison left office knowing his life's work would never be static. Each generation would reinterpret it, stretch it, stress it, and occasionally threaten it. That was not a failure design. It was the cost of freedom. His story matters because it reminds us that even the most carefully built systems are fragile in crisis. They rely on people to uphold them when fear makes abandonment tempting. They survive not through certainty, but through commitment. The Republic did not endure because Madison was right. It endured because enough people still believed it should. And that question has never stopped mattering. So what do you think? Are we repeating the same mistake again? Madison